What happens when, during a live stream, gospel superstar Deitrick Haddon confronts Bishop Noel Jones in front of thousands of people? The gospel community was rocked by the unvarnished, unadulterated moment. And believe me when I say that you won't believe what Deitrick said or how the supporters responded to it. This goes beyond church drama. Everyone is talking about the controversy. Although contentious arguments are nothing new in the gospel community, the exchange between Deitrick Haddon and Bishop Noel Jones on a recent live stream has escalated the situation. In the hopes of receiving words of wisdom, encouragement, or perhaps simply light conversation, viewers tuned in. However, they received a heated discussion that swiftly became one of the most talked about events in recent gospel history. Known for his audacious demeanor, inventive musical style, and readiness to question convention, Deitrick Haddon stunned his audience by publicly criticizing Bishop Noel Jones. This shade wasn't subtle. It was not a silent argument. In today's video, we're breaking down exactly what happened, why Deitrick chose this moment to speak out, what he said that has everyone buzzing, and how Bishop Noel Jones and fans reacted. It was a direct, unfiltered confrontation that left many viewers clutching their phones, rewinding the live stream, and asking, did he really just say that? We'll also give you an inside look at the deeper problems that this disagreement has brought to light in the gospel community and church. You won't only hear about the live broadcast itself, so take a seat. After seeing this video, you'll see why this altercation may be a turning moment for both men, and why there is still disagreement among gospel fans worldwide over who is right and who is wrong. It's crucial to comprehend Deitrick Haddon and Bishop Noel Jones' past before we enter into the thrilling live stream moment, for this was no impulsive outburst. In front of thousands of people, years of tension, divergent viewpoints, and different approaches eventually came to a head. Gospel music and ministry have always been disrupted by Deitrick Haddon. From his earliest years, he pushed musical boundaries with lyrics that occasionally conflate secular and spiritual themes, urban influences, and modern sounds. While some praised him as a visionary, others chastised him for being overly audacious, avant-garde, or vocal. Regardless of your feelings toward him, one thing was certain: Deitrick would never follow the conventional rules. Bishop Noel Jones, on the other hand, exemplifies an alternative leadership approach. A well-known and charismatic preacher with a large following, Noel Jones represents a more conventional style of ministering. His intelligence, his skill for preaching, and his capacity to appeal to both the pulpit and the general public have earned him recognition. But controversy is nothing new to him either. Whether it's arguments about his leadership style, personal life, or how he manages church affairs, the fact that both guys have platforms in the same evangelical ecology, in spite of their differences, is what makes their interplay so intriguing. They've shared stages, met at important events, and even worked together in ministry circles. Fans have been speculating about underlying tension for years. Some observe instances in which Deitrick appeared to subtly attack more established church leaders, implying that they were out of touch with modern society. Others highlighted instances in which N. Jones seems to ignore or avoid the demands for change made by the younger generation. Therefore, it wasn't a surprise when Deitrick Haddon finally called him out on a live stream. The two worlds collided here. Unvarnished honesty against refined diplomacy, modern versus traditional. Years have passed since the seeds of this conflict were sown, and everyone in the front row was able to see its eruption that night. This is the point at which things become heated. Deitrick's choice of words wasn't merely forceful. They bore burdens of history, frustration, and difficulty that went straight to the core of Bishop Noel Jones's reputation. The controversy-causing live stream began like any other. As he always does, Deitrick Haddon was chatting with his followers on Instagram informally, responding to their inquiries and voicing his opinions. Deitrick is known to fans for being brutally honest. He doesn't sugarcoat or sidestep touchy subjects. It was the same that evening. The discussion started off lightheartedly. Deitrick was thinking about the situation of the church, gospel music, and his own journey. He discussed innovation, the need for younger voices to be heard, and how antiquated approaches are no longer relevant in today's society. One name, however, jumped out as the names of prominent pastors and church leaders appeared in the comment area: Jones, Bishop Noel. At that point, things changed. Deitrick's tone shifted from lighthearted to solemn as he drew in closer to the camera. He didn't mince words. "I'm sick of the old guard acting like they have all the answers," he remarked, referring to the fact that some of these bishops have been preaching for decades and still fail to meet the needs of the people. "Indeed, I am referring to people such as Bishop Noel Jones." The atmosphere was electrifying, as viewers typed frantically, some in disbelief, others encouraging him, and some pleading with him to stop before he went too far. You could feel the discussion explode. Deitrick's vitality increased as the reactions poured in. He persisted in pointing out what he perceived as a gap between the hardships of common believers and those of influential leaders. He brought attention to the fact that people are dealing with actual problems, mental health issues, unstable finances, and broken families. However, a lot of traditional leaders' sermons still focus more on abstract theology than workable answers. He underlined that church leaders cannot continue to use the same strategy from the 1980s and 1990s since the world has changed. Deitrick's desire was what intensified the situation. He wasn't just ranting, he was hitting a nerve, purposeful and deliberate. He questioned whether some leaders are more interested in keeping their positions than in actually assisting individuals in their healing process. Additionally, he broke a line that most younger pastors wouldn't dare to cross by calling Bishop Noel Jones's name directly. This is where things become even more intriguing though. Deitrick went beyond criticism. By asserting that it's time for accountability and openness, he directly addressed Bishop Noel Jones. He hinted that there are things going on in church leadership that are not visible to the general public, but they have a significant impact. Viewers were left wondering whether he was advocating for reform or implying more serious issues because of the manner he spoke with conviction and without hesitation. Chaos broke out in the live stream chat. He was praised by half of the audience for expressing what many people had been thinking but were too scared to say, while the other half charged him with contempt, conceit, and causing needless strife within the body of Christ. Within minutes, screenshots of his remarks started to circulate. Before the live event even concluded, social media sites saw thousands of views on clips of the feed that were reposted. The worst part is still to come. There was more to this than a simple argument between two leaders. This was a live public altercation in front of thousands of people. It was uncooked, it wasn't filtered, and it was pretty clear about one thing. The gospel community's long-standing conflicts and wounds had finally erupted into the public eye. The drama didn't stop there either, because the real storm started after the stream ended. Social media was used by churchgoers, fans, and detractors to express their views, and their opinions demonstrated the true division of the gospel world. The social media backlash was the wildfire, if the live stream was the spark. Shortly after Deitrick Haddon's remarks against Bishop Noel Jones, videos started making the rounds on Facebook groups, Instagram, Twitter, and now X, as well as TikTok. Churchgoers, gospel enthusiasts, and casual observers all had something to say, and the responses showed a clear rift in the community. Supporters of DRI were on one side. Finally, someone said it. These voices contended that Deitrick was shown courage by expressing what many younger Christians have been experiencing for years, that some elderly leaders don't understand today's challenges. His supporters commended him for tackling pressing issues head-on, slicing through church politics and politeness. Deitrick's views resonated with many younger believers, who referred to him as a voice for this generation and a truth-teller. His remarks regarding mental health, financial difficulties, and the necessity of practical answers in church teaching were emphasized by several fans. Deitrick isn't disrespecting the church. One widely shared tweet stated, "That's what great leadership looks like. He's calling for it to evolve." Another user wrote, "Deitrick has a point. Noel Jones is a legend, but legends can also be questioned." Comments like these went viral online, bolstering Deitrick's position. The pushback, however, was equally if not more loud. Many of the extremely devoted supporters of Bishop Noel Jones believed that Deitrick's tactics went too far. They saw this as blatant disrespect rather than helpful feedback. Using Bishop Noel Jones' name to create controversy and attract attention to himself, Deitrick was accused by critics of clout chasing. Others referred to it as divisive. arguing that his criticism's public form was more detrimental to the church's unity than beneficial. Some even went so far as to imply that Deitrick was using the live stream as a forum to air out personal issues he had against more senior executives. To put it plainly, a Facebook post went viral. Deitrick ought to have picked up the phone rather than shouting it in front of everyone if he hadn't had a problem with Bishop Noel Jones. The church feels embarrassed by this. Among older generations who value hierarchy, respect, and private dispute settlement, that view was particularly prevalent in religious circles. In the meantime, the memes began to appear. TikTok developers layered eye rolls, applause, or reaction videos over dramatic clips of Deitrick's rage. News outlets and blogs covering Christian entertainment quickly jumped on the story as well. Instagram meme pages turned it into church satire with captions like, "When the choir member finally speaks their mind about the pastor," making the whole situation go viral beyond just the gospel music crowd. The headline said, "Deitrick Haddon versus Bishop Noel Jones. Fans are split over DRIs. Explosive remarks and the public call-out shakes the gospel world." These headlines added to the craze by attracting viewers who might not even be fans of gospel music but were unable to ignore the drama. The most notable aspect was the disparity in responses by generation. Younger admirers tended to support Deitrick and praised his candor. Elderly audiences, however, stood up for Bishop Noel Jones, highlighting his decades of service and the deference he merits. This conflict of viewpoints demonstrated that the argument was about more than just two men. It has to do with the church's own future course. Here's the twist though. People began posing an even more significant query as followers engaged in online discourse. What would Bishop Noel Jones himself think about being publicly and directly called out? Because Deitrick and the supporters were the source of all the commotion until now. Everyone, however, was waiting to see if Bishop Noel Jones would speak up or if he would keep quiet and wait for the storm to pass. All eyes were on Bishop Noel Jones as social media was booming and people were picking sides. Would he give Deitrick Haddon a retort? Would he make an announcement? Or would he remain silent and let the storm to pass, as experienced leaders frequently do? For many years, Bishop Noel Jones has served in the ministry, and if anyone knows him at all, it's because he has a history of scandal. Jones has been in the news a lot because of his sermons that challenge conventional wisdom and the public's interest in his relationships and personal life. Furthermore, he typically avoids confrontational public reactions in favor of quiet or well-crafted remarks. He is calm, collected, and above the fray, and it is part of his brand. This time, however, it felt different. In contrast to gossip or hearsay, this was a direct call-out. The pot was not stirred by tabloids. It was another well-known character in the gospel and ministry, with a following and impact of his own. Deitrick Haddon had publicly questioned him in front of hundreds of people, criticized his leadership style, and named him personally. Not only was the gospel community interested in Noel Jones's reaction, they were requesting it. Bishop Noel Jones said nothing in the days immediately after the live transmission. No interviews, no vehement sermon comments, no social media posts addressing the issue, nothing. This stillness was seen by some as evidence of wisdom. Jones's defenders contended that he didn't have to respond in a way that would elevate Deitrick's remarks. His quiet, which demonstrated to them that he was above trivial arguments, spoke louder than words. One internet fan said that the man had accumulated decades of ministry. For others, his quiet aroused concerns. But why would he waste energy on live stream drama? Some saw it as avoidance, wondering if Deitrick had mentioned more serious issues that Bishop Jones was unable to face. Why not reply to a critic who posted on X if there is nothing to conceal? Why not correct the record? Bishop Noel Jones's close acquaintances suggested in interviews and podcasts that he was aware of the situation but had no intention of directly addressing it, which fueled further conjecture. They presented his quiet as deliberate, an effort to diffuse the situation rather than stoke tensions. Even silence, though, can be contentious. Because Bishop Jones's decision to remain silent created a void that was filled with their own stories by bloggers, supporters, and critics. His quiet was regarded by some as dignified restraint. Others maintained that it was merely a tacit acceptance of Deitrick's criticism that senior leaders are disengaged from the people's problems. However, rumors started to circulate behind the scenes. Some in Jones's church reportedly felt taken aback by the call and put pressure on him to answer. Others in senior circles, however, counseled him to maintain his composure and allow the dispute to resolve itself. Thus, this became the key question. Was Bishop Noel Jones shown bravery and wisdom by remaining silent? Was it tacit admission that something had been offended by Deitrick Haddon's remarks? That's why the situation was so compelling, because one man stood his stand in silence while the other yelled his truth during the live feed, and it became evident that this was more than just a dispute between two leaders as the community discussed what that quiet meant. It was a symbolic struggle about how to manage leadership, openness, and conflict in the age of the contemporary church. Here's the worst part though. Deitrick Haddon had much to do, because he doubled down on his remarks when the dust settled, prompting supporters to question whether this was the start of a bigger movement or merely a passing fad in gospel entertainment. It's time to take a step back and consider why this tale is so important. After going over the background, the live broadcast explosion, the fan reactions, and Bishop Noel Jones's quiet, why did the gospel community experience such a fierce uproar over a single live stream? In actuality, this feud symbolizes something far more significant than a dispute between two well-known church leaders. It concerns the continuous struggle in the contemporary church between hierarchy and openness, respect and integrity, and tradition and change. Gospel culture has been supported by figures like Bishop Noel Jones for many years. They have led ministries that influenced whole generations, earning a reputation for their spiritual authority, knowledge, and charm. Their leadership style originated at an era when defying authority was viewed as rebellion, and prestige and longevity were linked to respect. Almost without question, people looked up to these leaders. However, things have changed. A new generation of Christians is calling for a change, including many Gen Zers and millennials. They want more than just well-crafted sermons. They desire unadulterated truth. They are looking for more than simply words of encouragement. They are looking for workable answers. Sunday sermons about faith aren't the only thing they want to hear. Throughout the week, they want to see relevance and accountability, and when they don't understand, they don't hesitate to express it loudly, openly, and without apology. Deitrick Haddon can help with that. There was more to his rage than Bishop Noel Jones. It concerned a system that, in the opinion of many, has not changed with the times. Deitrick symbolically challenged the entire old school of church authority by naming Jones. His remarks focused more on a trend than on a single man. The idea that some leaders maintain their position of authority and influence while being aloof from the hardships faced by regular Christians. The generational gap in gospel culture is also revealed by this conflict. Deitrick's candor spoke to younger Christians because it mirrored their dissatisfaction with what they perceived to be antiquated structures. In contrast, older Christians supported Bishop Jones not only out of loyalty but also because they respect tradition, order, and the respect that comes with years of service. A larger discussion regarding accountability is also brought to light by the feud. Leaders are more scrutinized than ever in the modern world, when anything can be live recorded, screenshotted, and published quickly. Avoidance, silence, and evasive responses no longer have the same impact. People go to voices like Deitrick, who aren't scared to stir things up when they don't get the transparency they want. This is where it becomes even more profound though. We are forced to consider the issue of unity in light of this circumstance. Does publicly criticizing leaders help to the necessary reform, or does it cause divisiveness among the Christian community? Some contend that even if speaking the truth upsets the status quo, it must be done so with courage. Others cautioned that public conflict erodes the church's credibility with the outside world and reduces holy issues to trivial topics. In any case, neither man is more significant than the Deitrick versus Noel Jones moment. It serves as a mirror for the gospel community, making everyone consider the direction the church is taking. Will it change to accommodate the demands of the current generation, or will it hold tenaciously to tradition? Will accountability and openness become the new norm, or will leaders continue to be untouchable? The actual kicker is right here. This is not the end of the narrative, because both Deitrick Haddon and Bishop Noel Jones will have to deal with the fallout as supporters, detractors, and churchgoers continue to argue. Will things be made right? Will church leaders have more candid discussions as a result? Or will it widen the gap between the old and the new, the old and the new, the old and the new, the open and the closed? Regardless of the result, one thing is for sure. The discourse in gospel culture has already been altered by this time. You cannot deny that this dispute has brought to light concerns that many people have been too scared to confront for years. Regardless of whether you support Bishop Jones or agree with Deitrick, leaders are more scrutinized than ever in the modern world, when anything can be live recorded, screenshotted, and published quickly. Avoidance, silence, and evasive responses no longer have the same impact. People go to voices like Deitrick, who aren't scared to stir things up when they don't get the transparency they want. This is where it becomes even more profound, though. We are forced to consider the issue of unity in light of this circumstance. Does publicly criticizing leaders help to the necessary reform, or does it cause divisiveness among the Christian community? Some contend that even if speaking the truth upsets the status quo, it must be done so with courage. Others cautioned that public conflict erodes the church's credibility with the outside world and reduces holy issues to trivial topics. In any case, neither man is more significant than the Deitrick versus Noel Jones moment. It serves as a mirror for the gospel community, making everyone consider the direction the church is taking. Will it change to accommodate the demands of the current generation, or will it hold tenaciously to tradition? Will accountability and openness become the new norm, or will leaders continue to be untouchable? The actual kicker is right here. This is not the end of the narrative, because both Deitrick Haddon and Bishop Noel Jones will have to deal with the fallout as supporters, detractors, and churchgoers continue to argue. Will things be made right? Will church leaders have more candid discussions as a result? Or will it widen the gap between the old and the new, the old and the new, the old and the new, the open and the closed? Regardless of the result, one thing is for sure. The discourse in gospel culture has already been altered by this time. You cannot deny that this dispute has brought to light concerns that many people have been too scared to confront for years. Regardless of whether you support Bishop Jones or agree with Deitrick,